Hello everyone. A good chunk of people following my channel are aware that I've played Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind in multiplayer in the past. I've not only done live streams with multiple players, I've also done a video with Fudge Muppet, and I've done a couple discussion videos with the main developer who works on the Elder Scrolls 3 multiplayer, or TES3MP for short. When the Elder Scrolls Online was originally announced and came out, a lot of people I know frequently said, "No one asked for an Elder Scrolls MMO." This is very often interpreted as nobody wants Elder Scrolls multiplayer, which I'm sure for some people is correct. I'm sure some people just want that single player experience and nothing else. However, a good chunk of players for a long time have been requesting co-op. That is a drop-in co-op system where you can join another player's adventure. Not a massive MMO or anything, and usually something along the lines of how Fable 3 dealt with multiplayer. This type of feature was only used in one Elder Scrolls game previously. That is Elder Scrolls Travel's Shadow Key for the Nokia N-Gage, where you had your own quest to collect Shadow Keys. However, you could jump into another player's game and help them out with their quest, although helping it would not advance the main quest in your game. Although there were individual attempts in Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim to create multiplayer via modding, this almost always centered around adding NPCs to the game, and then using an external program to let other players puppet those NPCs around your game world by moving around their game world, by mirroring the NPC to the player in other games' actions. For the longest time, this method utterly failed in all three games, and only had the most surface-level success. If you actually tried to play those games and just jump in and go through a quest together, it had always in the past amounted to a colossal failure. Eventually, Skyrim would get more or less a glorified chat room with attempts at showing other players running around, but again, nothing significant. Then came OpenMW, the open-sourced Morrowind engine. For anyone watching this with an interest in Elder Scrolls 3 at all, OpenMW is the most stable, and in almost every respect better than the base game. It is perhaps the best way to play Morrowind. But the best thing about OpenMW isn't any of those things, it's the fact that it's open source. This means if anyone wants to make a change to how OpenMW works, they can just open up the source code, edit it to their heart's content, compile it up, and they have their own custom version of OpenMW. This means that they're not restricted by Bethesda's modding framework limitations. A lot of the time, a lot of people will create this false equivalency where if you know how to make basic plugins, somehow you're an expert on Bethesda's engine, which isn't true at all. The truth is we were never given true software development kits for the Elder Scrolls or Fallout. Even if they were the same tools, they've had chunks of them removed. And quite frankly, nothing compares to having the source code at your disposal. And that's exactly what people do via OpenMW. Now, meanwhile, while people were just getting a LAN version of Skyrim called Tamriel Online Together, there was a fork being developed for Morrowind called TES3MP. Almost everyone calls it Morrowind Multiplayer, but anyone who's serious about software development these days knows a lot better than to use an existing trademark inside of your project title. So the Open Morrowind engine becomes OpenMW because we don't want to have that Morrowind trademark inside of it. Likewise, instead of Morrowind Multiplayer, we have TES3MP. Either way, unlike other attempts before it for Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, TES3MP doesn't hack the game to have NPCs puppeted by other players, but rather it has multiplayer baked into the game. With a complete install of TES3MP, you can play the main campaign and all side quests from beginning to end with other players. With a community patch, you can play all the expansion pack quests as well. And landmass mods like Tamriel Rebuilt, Morrowind Rebirth pretty much work right out of the box. with TES3MP. So recently, OpenMW released a post on their website called Making Things Official, where they were going to be integrating TES3MP into OpenMW. They're going to be making the multiplayer an official part of OpenMW. This is really good news, since the only thing TES3MP really needs is some ease of access tweaks to make it easier for connecting players to have the exact same mod loadouts as the server. I imagine these pieces will fall into place sometime after it's been officially integrated. So with OpenMW and TES3MP creating a nearly flawless Elder Scrolls multiplayer experience, we finally reached the question I get nearly every live stream, in comment sections, on social media, and on my Discord server. What do I think of Skyrim Together? If it weren't for the fact I've been bombarded by these questions, I don't think I would have even mentioned it, but since I have, and this topic is pretty well related, we might as well get into it. I've not participated in the closed beta myself, but I've watched a friend of mine play quite a bit of it. I've watched a couple other people whom I know play even more of it. From what I've seen, it is superior to any other multiplayer mod that has come before it for Skyrim. That is to say, Skyrim Online was a glorified chat room that was just garnering attention for almost no reason. And Tamriel Online was really only effective for ultra low latency like LAN play, and still encountered frequent crashes when everything was working well. Well, having watched friends play Skyrim Together, I can assure you this: there's still crashes in Skyrim Together. Go to backstab a merchant, game crashes. Go to exit a dungeon, game crashes. These are the best kind of game crashes too, the inconsistent kind. By best, I mean worst. You know, the ones that are a real pain in the rear to debug. I mean, debugging isn't something the vast majority of end users would even attempt, but on the average, across 3 people I've observed, they crashed on average every 2 hours. One guy manages to go 8 hours without a crash. Another guy crashed after 20 minutes because damn consistency. There are also some pretty big limitations with Skyrim Together. First of all, players are NPCs, just like we mentioned earlier. This is confirmed, and in several cases it causes issues with friendly fire and entering into combat with the other players, where it disables fast travel and things like that because, well, you're in combat right now. There are enemies nearby. You mean that other player who's a friend of yours? Yeah. There are also some large concerns about how it synchronizes the game's cells, meaning if multiple people enter a cell at the same time for the first time, they may not sync up. They may see different versions of the dungeon and its NPCs. The official FAQ on the subreddit actually says that you should clear dungeons first before trying to play them with other people, because that sort of thing doesn't synchronize. In general, Skyrim Together looks like a lot of fun, but it is a functionally limited experience. The interesting thing is that almost all of these problems aren't really Skyrim Together's problems. They are Skyrim itself causing issues. And the fact is that the developers of Skyrim Together, no matter how hard they work, are running up against the limitations of hacking the game, Skyrim. But it's important to explain here, before I get into some negatives, that despite all of those technical issues, Skyrim Together does work. It's got a great party system, and you can experience the game world together. Now then, that out of the way, despite its functional state, Skyrim Together, I have concerns, and other people in the community have concerns, which are attached to the Skyrim Together project. First and foremost, there is the concern regarding its closed development. Closed projects have a tendency to get abandoned or destroyed due to conflicts within the core development team, people not pulling their weight, or countless other things going on. Although just in general, in terms of projects that are done, more fail than are successful, with an open project, someone can always come along and pick up that failed project at a later date. Whereas with closed projects, those have a tendency to fade into obscurity after hundreds or thousands of man-hours in development. In response to some of the concerns people have about the closed development status, where they say, I'd love to contribute, I'd love to look over your code, see if there's anything I could tune up or fix, the developers themselves claim that the project was originally open and nobody contributed to it when it was open. And then they made the choice to close the development after they started making headway on it. Now, I've seen this rather entitled line before. No one was helping me before, when it was underway. I've heard this in countless other projects in the past. This often comes from developers who don't understand how the marketplace of ideas work. It's exceedingly rare to put forth an idea and immediately get help in that idea off the ground. Usually, some proving has to be done before folks will stand up, take notice, and start contributing. That's why a lot of open-sourced development projects for Linux have a communications director, either as a paid or an unpaid position, like a fan of some sort, who will take on the role of communicating the project to other people and making people aware of the project's existence. If no one's aware of the project's existence, no one's going to help you.
Hey everybody, my name's Khan. You might know me from something stupid like Morrowind videos, but I do spend a good deal of time helping out with a major open source project. The idea that open source does not improve the quality of a project's work is absurd when we consider that the biggest companies in the world, like Intel, IBM, and even Microsoft, contribute billions of dollars worth of employee man-hours to adding code and contributing to open source projects instead of doing everything in-house. Now, when you say that only amateurs want to contribute to your project, you're saying that you're the expert and everybody else is an idiot. That's not how you attract skilled and experienced people to help out on your project. You need to advertise and say out loud, I need help. I need people with these skills and this knowledge who can help me improve upon the project and build a better project and get things done in a timely fashion. There needs to be an element of graciousness. You can't just go out and say, if you sign up, I'll consider your application and see if you're worthy of helping me because I'm the expert and I know best and I need to train you regardless of what experience you have. You're just assuming that everybody knows less than you do. And that drives people away. People who do know what they're talking about are not going to be wanting to help someone who is lording over everything that they do and doesn't seem open to discussing things on an equal level with other contributors. It's not about the privilege of helping you. It's about working alongside others and getting the job done better together. And even if you do all that right, and still nobody signs up and nobody helps you out, you don't respond to that by abandoning open source and hiding the project away from everybody. That only ensures that it dies with you. If you are interested in building something that lasts forever and outlives your direct involvement, open source is the best way to ensure the legacy of your work instead of just throwing it away because nobody would help you. But what do I know? The project I'm involved in is only over 20 years old and has an install base of millions of users long after the original people took off. Anyways, Eric, back to you.
In a more complicated project, you'd usually have 3 or 4 people working under the communications director, but we're just going to assume that this is a free open-sourced project, some kind of very simple Linux distribution of something. So we're going to say that it's just a single person online who isn't paid. But what they're doing is they're cruising the internet. They're making sure the main news page is up to date. They're making sure that various forums, YouTubers, social media, websites, different news sites about software development are all informed and up to date with whatever is going on in that project. If the project is making headway in a particular thing, that person makes it known. If the project's looking for developers to help with a very specific subset of circumstances, say they're looking to make this particular piece of Linux software also have a Mac distribution, well, then they would ask for a Mac developer's help. And the communications director, whoever that is, just be at a normal, average, unpaid guy on the internet, just giving up his time, he would go to Mac development websites and say, hey, this project is looking for a Mac developer to help port it over to Mac. This person is usually a non-programmer, non-developer. Sometimes they're a friend of the lead programmer, and it's just a two-person gig. One person programming, one chopping the ideas, and eventually, as the project builds up steam, they get more developers on board because the person who was promoting the damn thing was doing their job. These are usually free projects, and the developers themselves do not get paid. You see, if nobody knows about the project, nobody's going to contribute. Let's look at another Elder Scrolls project, Daggerfall Unity. It's very close to being done. Let's look at the roadmap for Daggerfall Unity. See, all the things in green, that's stuff that's done. The stuff in yellow is being worked on, and the stuff in gray will be worked on later. You see all those names in parentheses? Those are other developers who've contributed to the project. Do you think that if no one was promoting this project, that it would have garnered this kind of support? No way. So when I use the word entitled, discussing a developer who shouts, "Nobody was helping me," that's why. That said, let's forget about those posts for now. The community does have quite a few cynical people who are looking at the project with skepticism. At the time of posting this, their Patreon is over $33,000 a month. Originally, people claimed this money was going to pay wholly for server costs and general just project costs. And people have the right to be skeptical about a claim like that. Clarification, however, came in as they formatted their Patreon page that it was also paying for plane tickets, rentals, getting them new computers built, things of that nature. That clarification may not satisfy everyone, but I think it's more than fair. Now, if it's discovered the people are paying themselves a salary on this money, then my complaint is not that they're paying themselves. I think that everyone is entitled to be paid for their work. My only complaint would be that they would not disclose that fact, that they would be taking money under false pretenses. Taking money under false pretenses is fraud. Anyway, prior to this clarification that they were going to buy computers or pay for rentals and plane tickets, I was heavily suspecting fraud. Now, folks scream, "This is just a mod! It is not a full game! The people who believe it is a full game and are expecting full game results are entitled!" When money enters into the equation, it is no longer just a mod. It is a funded project. Funded projects and money itself bears a sense of entitlement. We may not like that, but it exists. And that's why certain people may fund the project or decline to fund the project based on what facts are available. Contrary to popular opinion, $1 does not mean they have to agree with you. Your only legal recourse as a backer is to not be a backer anymore, if you don't agree with what they're doing or saying or whatever. I find the scandal going on around this, the way people continually accuse them of fraud, to be a bit dubious, to say the least. I think that building computers, rental, plane tickets, things like that, makes perfect sense to me. I mean, they didn't have to say those things. They didn't have to list where that money was going. They decided to do that. They made the choice to do that. But now this will generate a lot of people saying, prove it. But as I said, there's a lot of cynicism orbiting this project from people who are saying that they're going to delay the project's full release as long as possible to keep that sweet Patreon money going. I don't really trust a theory like that. However, when coupled with the idea that Skyrim Together is going to run like a live service without fully private servers, in the sense that you need to log into the official server in order to play, that does some credence to that theory. Think about it like this. If the login server stops being funded, the server's going to go away, right? And then no one's going to be able to play Skyrim Together anymore. Using that as an impetus to continue having the project funded, that's a scary thing. Because it's a closed project, nobody can pick it up and say, okay, so they stopped supporting this, we're going to create a new server over here. They've created a central live service business that they are running off of donations. Keep in mind, I've worked with nonprofit organizations in the past, and a nonprofit organization still has to, through member donations or whatever, break even. It can't run on debt. In the same way that Skyrim Together can't run on debt. It needs to make at least enough money to keep the servers going. And what some people are afraid of is that this login server of a closed project version of Skyrim Together is going to be held hostage for Patreon donations. I don't believe this theory, but I still find the closed server concept where you have to log into the main service somewhat distasteful. When I have access to a project like TES3MP, where anyone can host their own server and anyone can connect to that server if they have the password, I find that much more reasonable, personally. And if I had to choose one or the other, I would definitely choose the client server and the open source and all of that. I guess this just brings us full circle here because, like it or not, Skyrim Together has become a business. And that leads to drama. Now, I'm not saying that projects like TES3MP have been drama-free. TES3MP supports full Lua scripting, where you can have all kinds of custom servers. There was, for a short amount of time, a Vardenfell Battle Royale, where everyone is just distributed randomly across Vardenfell. They got to get weapons, spells, whatever, and they're teleported to the Vivek Arena in order to battle. That was a custom server for TES3MP. But another server, a different one, had a guy who was running a fairly popular server. His server was also detecting the IP addresses of other server owners. And then it would have this little pop-up that would say that they should consider giving up their server and just playing on his instead. If they clicked no, it would ban them from the server. This player was well known in the World of Warcraft community for multi-boxing a huge number of characters in order to grief other players during Warlords of Draenor. He became very vocal and very toxic in the community to the point where his server was delisted from the official TES3MP multiplayer server. While TES3MP is still being played to this day by many people, he was one of the larger server runners. He would claim it was the largest. He would claim that a good chunk of the community left with him. I don't think it's as big a chunk as he thinks it is, but he definitely tried to take those people with him. His ego was exemplified by him trying to fork TES3MP, claiming that he was the new project leader and the old developer's project was outdated. Of course, he'd gained no traction on that because he wasn't a real developer, and development on TES3MP continued despite him. But that is something that can happen with an open source project, is at some point in time, someone could pick up a rival project and run with it. And if they do a better job than you did, then they get the community. They get the user base, because their project is better than yours. However, because of the way the open source license agreement works, you could then take their code and improve upon it, and to the best goes the community. Kind of interesting how competition works in that regard. Feels less like theft and more like a bunch of people one-upping each other. But again, in TES3MP that never happened. In TES3MP, a guy just claimed to be the new developer and did nothing with the project at all. And the old project continued despite him. But that is the interesting thing. If you did decide to take your hammer to it, you could create your own fork of TES3MP with your own master server. That's the power of source code. In conclusion, TES3MP or Morrowind multiplayer is a fully functional multiplayer mode for Morrowind, while Skyrim Together is a mostly functional but rather limited multiplayer mode for Skyrim. While TES3MP had a bit of community drama, there were no real scandals in its runtime, and it's actually being made an official part of the Open Morrowind engine, OpenMW. Skyrim Together, on the other hand, has a constant flood of naysayers who dislike the project's closed nature, the server structure, and claim the developers may be up to something shady with the funding. I can't say myself if it's true or not. I don't care to look into it to any real degree. But I've heard no end of concerns. And I'm going to mirror that fact to other people when they ask me about the project. I think if you're going to try the project, you should keep all of that in mind and weigh your morals accordingly. Morals, what are those? I'm a hypocrite. I want Skyrim Together to be successfully released. But you can see why people would be hesitant to try the closed, backer-only paid beta. That's all I gotta say on Elder Scrolls multiplayer for now. I'll have links to OpenMW, TES3MP, and Skyrim Together, so you can check out the projects yourself. I'll also have a link to a video where I'm actually playing the Morrowind multiplayer, and you can check that out for yourself. I'm actually told the developer of TES3MP has some ideas for Lua modules that he'd like to release alongside of TES3MP with some expanded features at some point in the future. That's all unofficial rambling. Nothing's been announced yet because the developer, to my knowledge, hasn't started on it yet. However, if I do hear about any more of that, expect a video on those for sure. And if you think that there's a particular gameplay alteration that could be done in TES3MP for multiplayer functionality in Morrowind, why don't you leave a comment and tell me about it? Because with open source, the possibilities are virtually limitless. And TES3MP has been built to run off Lua modules, so pretty much anything is possible within the context of still just it being normal OpenMW. So yeah, I'd love to hear those comments about what kind of features you'd like to see. But other than that, people just demanded to know my opinion on Skyrim Together. And I gave it. It's pretty much, I've heard a lot about it. I've seen a little bit of it. I'll try it myself when it actually comes out. Thank you all for watching. Check the links on screen for more content, and I'll see y'all next time.